Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review, and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today we are discussing chapter 49 of The Wandering Inn by Pirate Arbor. This is a web serial which has been ongoing for like a billion years now, and each chapter, at the moment, each chapter is like 10,000 words, so like five chapters is a novel. We're almost at 50 chapters now. I have been reading and then discussing in depth each chapter once per week on Thursdays. Sometimes I do an extra one, and sometimes I change the day if we've got, embargoed stuff. But let's get straight into things. So I think we have to kind of debrief a little bit from last week's chapter, which I actually didn't share that I had read the chapter on social media, on Twitter, which is where I normally share those videos. And I didn't share that because the official Wandering Inn account follows me and retweets those. And I feel weird saying an author has done some bad writing, if that makes sense, because I'm not an author. Like, I'm not as talented as Pirate Arbor. I'm not an author. I do have a creative writing degree, so I do feel like I have some license to criticize. But I was very, very critical of last week's chapter, saying that I thought it was quite poorly written. And I had decided not to share that video because, I put it on the channel, obviously, and I shared it with people. But that specific video I decided not to share on social media because I thought it was quite critical, and I felt a bit weird about it because the official channel followed me. Reading the comments on last week's episode, a lot of people were like, this absolutely makes sense. Somebody did spoil something in the comments, which wasn't very cool. Most people are saying, like, yes, this is a point where a lot of people stop reading. This is really, really, this is like a really big thing within the community that we discuss, and that this chapter isn't great. And that there is no chapter again in future that's as incongruous as this one. So that gave me a lot of confidence, and it let me, being able to do the video helped me get a lot of the emotion out of it, if that makes sense. So I wasn't stewing on it as the way if I had been reading this week to week as it was released back in whenever it came out, 2017, the rewrite came out. So God knows when the actual original Volume 1 came out. But 2017, if I'd been reading it back then, week to week, I think it would have been a long time before I would have come back to it. Obviously, we are now back to it 1 week later. And I did think, I was like, oh, should I put the Wandering Inn series on hiatus for a bit, because just to kind of get the bad taste of that chapter out of my mouth. And I realised the best way to do that is to read good chapters. So this was a good chapter. We are back with Erin, thankfully. So this one has we've talked before about kind of bridging chapters where they seem to be getting us from one story to the next, or like one kind of story arc or something like that. So this one seems to be kind of the beginning of something new. So one of the big things we find out is that there has been a fire in Liscor, likely started by magical means, and the suspect is human. And it's burned a lot of the market stalls. So obviously we are still trying to deal. There was that lady, princess, whatever, running around that either worked for or was related to Magnolia Reinhardt. so that character, we had like a couple of paragraphs of POV from her scattered across chapters. So that was she was, before the adventurers turned up, she was the other human in Liscor, and she was like hiding and all that sort of jazz. Now obviously the town's full of adventurers, and there's a lot of humans around because a lot of humans become adventurers. And in fact, we find out later that the town is so packed with adventurers, there's not a single bed left in any of the inns in the town. Erin has also been using Torin, the skeleton, to run the like basic jobs of the inn. So like being a waiter, and like cleaning and tidying and that sort of stuff. And she has she's confirmed in that she's refurbished the whole of the top floor of the inn. She says she had to throw away the mattresses, but then doesn't at all mention or reference that she's got new mattresses. So I guess she must have got new mattresses, but like she never says that she does. And she specifically says she doesn't have new pillows and goes to buy some. And that's when we find out about the merchant. So then we get in, when she goes to town, she sees Relk, and they talk a little bit about Klibich, and they talk about how there's a new prognicator, which is what Klibich's job was in the Antinium Hive. And we know that the prognicator's job is basically to hunt down the aberrant Antinium and kill them so that they don't kill other workers, because we saw that one Antinium turn into an aberration and they killed like 100 workers or something before they could be stopped because the workers don't fight back. Pawn, as we know, is kind of an aberration because he has an individual identity that the other ants do not have. But he's kind of a good guy aberration, and it seems like he has evolved this into sentience and personhood based on interacting with Erin and learning and growing through chess. So very interesting what's going on with this character. We get some more mention of the Antinium Queen, who I would love to hear more about what's going on with them. I think the Antinium are like one of the most interesting things in the Wandering Inn, because they're very unique. I know that Adrian Tchaikovsky wrote that he's written a sci-fi and a fantasy series about insects and spiders and stuff, which I'm interested in reading both. So Shadows of the Apt, I think, is the one that's the like bug people fantasy, and then there's a Children of Time, I think, is the sentient super evolved spiders series. So I'm interested in reading both of those eventually, somewhere down the line. I don't know how long the Children of Time books are. Maybe I should look that up because I do need more sci-fi stuff to read. Anyway, so yeah, the ants, the Antinium specifically, even though they aren't unique in fantasy, and they aren't unique across, fantasy and sci-fi, they are one of the most interesting elements because they feel like the most kind of out of the norm. So, they're not elves or dwarves or like generic fantasy races like dragon men or like dog men or whatever. They seem a bit more interesting, and also they seem to have kept they play more on the ant side than on the people side. Whereas if you look like people like Kershia and Celis and Relk, they're more like people with like extra bits, whereas the Antinium are like ants with extra bits, if that makes sense. So yeah, interesting stuff going on there. We then fast forward a little bit, and we actually meet the new prognicator, and he looks like Klibich, because one assumes they all kind of look alike. All the ants in their different roles. So he comes to the inn to take Pawn because he's an aberration, to question him, see if he's going to go mad and start killing people. And then, so Erin tries to stop him, and the prognicator cuts off one of Pawn's antennae, and then fights off Erin and Rags and Torin, the skeleton, and leaves and takes Pawn with him. the other workers in the inn are like, Eren, you can't go. He will kill you. It's a crime to interfere in his job. So interesting stuff going on there. I'm going to assume that Pawn doesn't die because we've got like there's a lot of ant stuff going on, and I feel like to kill another ant character and then I guess replace them further down the line would just not be particularly interesting. So, and I don't think Pirate Arbor is the kind of writer who is going to go like, I'm going to go down the least interesting route and just keep killing off these Antinium characters. I would rather that they took the time and brought us back to the kind of kept us with the same Antinium characters and let them evolve, rather than making us kind of go through the motions of it, you know. Anyway, so next up, as she's going back to the inn, she finds some adventurers who are attacking Rags and Tauren, and the adventurers are like really taking them out, and the Rags is barely holding her own. And Erin, who's holding her big frying pan, uses her unerring throw skill and throws it at the head of the lead adventurer, who happens to be a Minotaur. And the Minotaur just turns and catches it because he's like super badass. And that's Calruz. So the thing that I said last week was that I felt like Erin was the more interesting main character, but had the worse supporting cast. Like Rags is interesting conceptually, but not talking makes her kind of harder to get behind. Pawn is obviously kind of at the beginning stages of his character development. Relk we don't like. Celis we don't really see much of. Kershia is definitely doing something dodgy. Tauren is great. I love Tauren, but again, not speaking makes it hard for us to truly like bond with him as a character. Whereas Cheeria and Calruz and the Horns of Hammerad are like really, really good supporting cast, and I really like spending time with them. So the fact that they have come over to Erin's storyline when I'm annoyed with Ryoka and don't really want to read Ryoka chapters is real good for me. I'm sure that Eren and Ryoka will meet before the end of this book, and I'm sure that Ryoka will just piss Eren off and ditch her for no reason. But for now, great to see the Horns hanging out with Eren, and looking forward to more stuff coming down the pipe, as it were, from these characters. So I think that's basically everything this chapter. Where do we end up? Is there a cliffhanger here? There is no cliffhanger. The cliffhanger is that none of them know how to play chess. So yeah, a good chapter, and I think that getting the Horns of Hammerad out of the Ryoka chapters right after Ryoka has really annoyed the audience, and allowing us to maybe get a bit more connected to those characters through Eren, the inn actually being working, and her starting to make money through the inn, which is, she says she's got that target of 100 gold pieces or whatever that she'll need to get to Istram Academy and try and find a wizard who will teleport her back home. That is obviously that's an interesting storyline that I would like to follow. I've talked a bit before about how I really like the concept of like character has been in fantasy world and then returns home story, and like the concept of like fantasy character, you know, or like our world character takes fantasy characters to our world. So that could be really interesting if that ever happens. So I'm glad that story is kind of keeping going in the background. Probably doesn't happen. I'm probably just wishing for something that's not going to happen. But guys, don't tell me if it does, because that would be a spoiler. And as we say always with these chapters, no future spoilers, please. because somebody did do that last week. Anyway, yeah, good chapter this week. What really kind of washing the taste of the chapter that I really didn't like last week out. And as always, yeah, just really looking forward to continuing with this series. We're closing in now. So next week is chapter 50. And after chapter 50, I think there's only like 14 more chapters before the end of the volume. Once we finish volume 1, I am going to be switching over to the Kindle ebook version, and I will be comboing with the audiobook as well, which should mean that I can actually read a bit quicker and I can read a bit more to my convenience. I do enjoy reading it off the website, but the one big issue that I have with The Wandering Inn is that I like to do things like go out for a run and things like that while listening to audiobooks. Like yesterday, so I'm reading Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio, and yesterday I listened to like 10% of that book via audiobook while doing chores around my house and going for a run. Whereas with The Wandering Inn, I'm trapped with a tablet on the sofa, you know? So may end up actually that in June we read a few extra chapters. So my current plan is that I may try and read some extra chapters in June, depending on what's going on with the rest of my reading. So reading those extra chapters, and we can finish up volume 1 in June and start volume 2 in July. So like I said, we have, I think it's 64 is where the volume ends. Let's look it up. Maybe we can actually make a plan together. So 63 is actually the end of chapter. There are 2 interludes. So if we say conservatively 65 is the amount of chapters, I guess. And we've just read 49. So it's 50. So like 15 chapters. And obviously we've got a few weeks in May. So if I read 2 a week in June, I think we could probably finish the volume. Or at least maybe 1 week I'll do like, I know I've talked about this before, but do like a binge read week where I'll just binge Wandering Inn and we'll just do a new Wandering Inn episode every day. So maybe that's a possibility. Might be a good way to finish the volume actually, because one imagines that the end of the volume will have some really good story beats, story moments and cliffhangers. So I can binge read those and then upload them as I go. So yeah, those are kind of my future plans. Looking to, as I say, start volume 2, book 2 in July. Currently, no plans to pause or take a hiatus between volumes. I had thought about it for a while, taking a hiatus between volumes. But at the moment, I'm kind of looking forward to getting into that audiobook territory. So yeah. Anyway, thanks so much everyone for watching along with me today. As always, the Wandering Inn videos are great, and I love talking to you guys in the comments. And I do know that people have been despairing about the speed of these with doing only 1 chapter a week. Now the chapters are so long. But I do think that if we're able to do a few double chapter weeks, and like I said, we're starting volume 2 in July, hopefully early July, but definitely in July. I'll make, you know what, we're making a promise. That's not it. We'll pinky swear it. We're going to start volume 2 in July. Anyway, so yeah, thanks so much for watching the video. If you have liked it, drop a like. As I said, I love chatting to you guys in the comments, so please do leave a comment. And then finally, Subscribe to the channel to be notified when these go live every Thursday, or maybe even more frequently. And I will speak to you guys tomorrow.